On October 7th, 2001, less than a month after the terror attacks of 9/11, President George W. Bush announced an invasion of Afghanistan. He pledged to obtain justice for the American people and destroy the Taliban. To lead the invasion, he chose the most advanced stealth bomber in his arsenal at the time, the B-2 Spirit. The B-2 would fly from Missouri to Afghanistan, drop GPS-guided bombs, then fly home, reaching over 70 hours of flight time and over 14,000 miles of flight. This is the story of the longest bombing mission in history.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Just 10 days after the Twin Towers fell, the United States announced the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks, Osama bin Laden. President Bush made it clear to the Taliban and to the American citizens that justice would be served as soon as possible. The U.S. immediately made a list of demands to the Taliban. They requested the Taliban deliver all leaders of Al-Qaeda, release imprisoned foreign nationals, close every terrorist training camp, hand over every terrorist to the authorities, and give the United States full access to terrorist camps for inspection. Obviously, the Taliban refused to meet the demands, despite the threat of destruction from US and other NATO allies.
And to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime. We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain.
On September 26, 2001, the US deployed a covert CAA team, as well as US and British special forces, to assess and strategize for the invasion of Afghanistan. They nominated to start the invasion with an air campaign. They would strike hard and fast into the heart of Afghanistan, dropping bombs and missiles on terrorist training camps, airfields, air defense sites, and known hideouts of high-ranking terrorists. They then had to choose who to send first. The initial invasion had to be a surprise. They needed stealth and long range. So they chose the B-2, the nation's most capable stealth bomber to date. Using the B-2 would avoid the risk of air defenses spotting the initial invasion and allow ordnance to be dropped to catch the enemy completely off guard. The B-2 bombers were stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. Whiteman Air Force Base, home of the 325th and 393rd Bomb Squadrons, was over 7,000 miles from Afghanistan, and with the invasion less than 30 days away, commanders and defense coordinators formulated a perfect plan to get the B-2 to Afghanistan without alarming neighboring nations and without having to land the plane before dropping these bombs. The planned route was not the shortest, but the safest. The shortest route would have been over the North Pole and across Russia, which at the time would have been impossible due to Russia and US relations. They opted into flying west across the Pacific. Doing this reduced the risk of opposing nations alarming the Taliban of the incoming invasion. The B-2s had been undergoing intense pre-flight tests and maintenance in the days leading up to the invasion. With the bombers waiting and ready, the pilots were briefed on the flight plan. They would fly from Whiteman to California, refuel from a KC-135 tanker, and then start across the Pacific. They would then fly to Hawaii to aerial refuel, and then Guam, then the Strait of Malacca, and then Diego Garcia, not landing one time. Then they would fly into enemy territory and drop their weapons. From October 7th to October 9th, 2 B-2s a day would fly this route, each with unique targets. Out of 6 flights total, the night of October 8th ended up being the longest bombing mission in history. Major Melvin G. Daly and Captain Brian Neal, piloting the B-2, nicknamed the Spirit of America, had over 30 hours of flight time ahead of them just to get to Afghanistan. The pilots took off from Whiteman Air Force Base and headed west towards California. During flight, one of the pilots would take a turn sleeping while the other flew. They arrived off the coast of California, and both pilots guided the B-2 to refuel, the first out of 5. They flew further west to Hawaii, refueled, and then continued towards Guam. The bombs of choice were JDAM equipped bombs ranging from 500 to 2,000 pounds. JDAM kits were relatively new technology at the time, but made regular bombs deadly accurate in any weather using GPS guidance and predetermined strike points. These strike points changed multiple times mid-flight. Each new point had to be updated manually in the B-2's computer and then uploaded to the bombs, requiring hours of reprogramming. After many hours of flight, both taking turns sleeping, using the restroom, eating, and aerial refueling, the Spirit of America approached Afghan airspace. Just before entering Afghan airspace, the sun was setting and both pilots were fatigued from the long flight. They took what the Air Force calls go pills. After some research, I believe the pill they took was modafinil. Modafinil is a central nervous system stimulant prescribed by flight surgeons to improve wakefulness and cognitive ability during long flights. The crew, now awake and ready, are over Afghan airspace and begin using their air-to-ground radar to scan and ID targets. After 2 hours over country, they dropped 12 of their 16 JDAMs, resulting in multiple direct hits. Captain Brian Neal took the controls and turned the B-2 towards Diego Garcia, which was a small airbase on a small island off the coast of Africa. The crew linked up with a tanker, refueled, and continued towards Diego Garcia to land until they got a radio call from command requesting they turn around and drop the 4 remaining JDAMs on new strike points. The crew acknowledged and re-entered Afghan airspace. After dropping the remaining bombs, the crew was halfway done with the flight. They routed to Diego Garcia, where they would land and refuel. They lined up, touched down at Diego Garcia after 44 hours of continuous flight and 16 bombs dropped. Diego Garcia was such a small base, the B-2s couldn't stay there, as there were B-52s and B-1s stationed there. The crew kept the B-2 running as they would only stay for 45 minutes just to refuel. 2 new pilots were put on the B-2 and ordered to fly it back to Missouri. After landing in Missouri, the B-2 shut off its engines for the first time in 70 hours. The bombs dropped by the B-2s on the first 3 nights of the invasion were ruled successful and set up the airspace for more vulnerable, less stealthy aircraft. The mission, soon after, was recognized as the longest bombing mission in history. To quote one of the pilots from that mission, now Dr. Melvin Daly, "Of all the aircraft that could have flown the longest combat mission in aviation history, perhaps it was serendipity or providence that it was the Spirit of America that made that journey. The aircraft that represented the country showed that America will fly any distance, cover any ground, and overcome any obstacle to bring justice to its enemies when she is attacked." Thank you guys for watching. I know my voiceovers don't sound that good. I'm working on getting a new mic, but thank you for watching. If you have any requests or any ideas you want me to try, drop them down below. Again, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.